Today we meet Chris White, Chief Information Officer from Clyde Co. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Do you think that IT managers, CIOs, have sufficient access to the board in the largest UK law firms?
Well, I think it varies across law firms. I've absolutely no doubt about that. But I think it really depends on the CIO. In sort of a normal working environment, and again, the more senior you become, the less you have to wait for an invitation to get a position on the board or get access to the board or to the senior parts of the business. It's very much up to the CIO. And I think as a leader, a senior business person within a business, you have to force your way to that table, and you have to demonstrate that you have, I suppose, the credibility and that you can add value by being at that table. And so it's interesting in the legal world. I often hear this complaint about IT directors not being on the board, IT directors not getting money to invest in the business. And my response to that is, well, it's entirely up to you to get the money to invest. So, for example, as you know, I'm currently Global CIO for Clyde Co. And I've been with the firm approaching 2 years now. And when I first went to the firm, we were running quite an old technology environment. And my first question was, why are we running such old technology? The response I got was, well, we've never had the money to invest. And my response to that was quite clear. Well, clearly you've never made a sufficiently compelling business case to get the money to invest. Because if you go to the board as an IT director, as an IT techie, and you talk about, I want a new server, I want a new router, I want a new widget, quite rightly, the board's eyes are going to glaze over very, very quickly. If you go to the board with a compelling, well thought through business case, where you can demonstrate the return on that investment, where you can demonstrate the value that investment is going to bring to your business, the board are going to be interested in that. And I can't think of really any occasions in my life during my whole working career where I've gone to the board, asked for money to invest, and they've said no, because I don't talk about technology. I talk about the value technology can contribute to my business.
So it's really important for you to understand the business, what the business is trying to achieve, and put your needs in that context.
Very much so, yes. I was talking at a conference fairly recently when we were looking at sort of what the IT team should look like in a law firm. And in fact, it's not just a law firm, it's any business. And what I said very, very clearly was that my job as CIO, I'm not a technologist, I'm a business leader. And I spend well over half my time talking to people in my business about the business strategy, about the future direction of Clyde Co., not about technology. Because, yes, I'm responsible for a technology shop. I'm responsible for a lot of people around the world and delivering a technology service. And, that's a very, very important part of my role. But I also have a role in terms of helping the business develop. And, again, I think certainly in the past, a lot of IT people in the legal community have forgotten that. And they think IT is a means in itself. They think IT is what is important. Of course it's important, but you have to understand the context you are working in. And again, within Clyde Co, within my IT team, I'm very clear, my IT team is not good enough to be just a good technologist. You have to understand very, very clearly the impact of what your technology has on the business. You have to understand the impact your particular role, you may be a Cisco router engineer or something like that, but you have to understand the impact that your particular role, your particular technology has on that business. Because if you don't, you can't do your job.
Equally, partners have been have often not engaged as much as they ought to.
Mm-hmm.
Is that changing? Are you finding that they're more open to listening to you?
Well, is it changing? Yes, it is changing. Why is it changing? It's not changing because they have suddenly realised IT is important. It is changing because, again, it's up to the CIO, the IT director, to actually promote the value of technology in the business. And again, it's how you have those conversations. So again, Clyde Co, my current firm, when I went there, because the level of engagement or the conversation had been around in the past around technology, around the servers, around the routers, around the technology itself, and not about the value, partners quite rightly were not engaged whatsoever, or very, very little within with the whole technology debate. What I've tried to do is raise the level of that debate, change that level of debate from technology, again, going back to my point about the value technology contribute to the business and the risk of not having this investment in technology. So just by putting in place a global technology board, which consists of some very senior influencers in my business, some very senior partners, representative from all regions. Clyde Co, as you know, is a global business, so we have a representative on the board from all regions. We have elevated that debate from being a technology debate into a business debate.
That's interesting. So what do you mean by influence? So people from outside of Clyde Co?
No. People within Clyde Co.
They're all from within Clyde Co.
They're all from within Clyde Co. But they're all very senior and influential people in Clyde Co. So they're not just a group of technologists or IT people from around the world. They are very senior partners. They are the chief operating officers from each of the region, the chief executive, the finance director. So very senior influencers within the business. And by bringing that group together and by modelling it, or making it look like that with those sorts of people, again, we have a very, very different discussion and engagement around IT than we would have ever had in the past. And sorry to interrupt, but those people are not only there to help me with direction of IT, but very importantly, they act as ambassadors for IT out in the business. So it's all very well for me going out promoting IT around the business, but I can't do it all myself. I need people on my side to do this, and because these are very senior people within the business, they can influence strongly their peer group in the business. So again, it helps to actually spread that message about we're spending a lot of money on IT, and it helps to actually get the message out, why we're spending this money, and again, coming back to this point, the value we are contributing to the business.
Yeah, and so does the board come up with strategy? Do you have a sort of global strategy for IT that you?
We have a global strategy for IT, and again, that's something I'm driving, because when I joined the firm, it was very fragmented, and different offices were doing different things. So I've deliberately driven a global strategy, and my strategy is all about one single strategy globally, standardization as far as we can globally. And by having standard technology across the world, all sorts of benefits, we can support it centrally, so we can put in place 24/7 follow-the-sun IT support. We can train it centrally. When our lawyers move around the world, they work in exactly the same way if they're working in London or Singapore or Shanghai or San Francisco, or wherever else it might be around the world, they work in the same way. And of course, we can benefit from negotiating, procuring on a global basis, so we can get better deals.
Yeah, absolutely. And has the budget increased as a result?
The budget has increased as a result, yes. And again, the reason the budget's increased as a result is because I've been very clear about the returns on that investment. And again, what I've tried to do is I've tried to reduce the operational cost of running IT, the day-to-day running costs of IT, so that the money I have available I can actually use on projects, which is the investment in technology for the business.
So how have you done that? How have you reduced the cost?
Well,
has the team grown? Has it shrunk?
The team has grown. The number of projects we run has grown significantly. The number of global rollouts, projects and things like that has grown significantly. The way we have reduced the operational cost is firstly by I've come in, I've looked to see what we do and how we do it. And I think like any organisation which has been around for quite some time, it needs a fresh pair of eyes on something. There's lots of things we've stopped doing because it's not adding any value to our business. So we've actually stopped spending money in certain areas. I've renegotiated a lot of deals because in the past we've not been particularly good at procurement, or we've not used our global scale to procure particularly good deals. So we've renegotiated a lot of deals, and finally look very carefully about how we actually source a lot of the work that we do. again, traditionally the business has been all about doing everything internally ourselves. And that is not necessarily the best way of doing it. So everything we do now, we look to see the best way of sourcing it. So it might be some things we know we need to actually continue to do ourselves. It might be the third party is a far better way of procuring these sorts of services and delivering these services to the firm. It might be the cloud is the best way. So rather than just assuming there's the one sourcing model, we now look at the range of sourcing models. And again, getting better value for money from these deals we have.
Okay, so you're looking at outsourcing.
Well, yes, I'm
specifically outsourcing.
Well, I'm not looking. I'm very, very much not of the camp that we need to outsource everything. I use this term right sourcing. Yeah. So my resourcing model should be: we do some in house, we do some outside, we do some in the cloud, and again, there's certain areas where I think we need to focus my IT effort, my IT resource. And that is all about where we can add value. I'm sorry to keep on using this term, but it's where we can add value to the business. So, for example, running a network, is that really going to add a great deal of value to my business? Clearly it's essential we have a good, reliable network in place, but actually there are people out there in the market who are in a far better position to deliver that service to my business than we are as an IT team. Now, the areas where we can add real value is in terms of intimately understanding what our business is about, intimately understanding the legal process, what our lawyers are doing on a day-to-day basis, the challenges they face. And if we have people focusing on that, we can then make sure we're using the right technology in our business, which is really going to support our lawyers in doing their jobs. So we can add value doing that. A third party will find it more difficult to do that. We can add real value around supporting our users in the use of that. So those are sort of areas I would always keep in-house. But to say some of the more commoditized sort of areas, the sort of the hygiene factors, anybody can do that. So we're actually looking to see what we should be doing in-house, what should be done outside.
Innovation, is that hard? Is that something that law firms are particularly bad at, do you think?
Well, I think it's an interesting term, innovation. If we look at innovation as the next fad, the next handheld device, those sort of things. We're innovation in a law firm is very, very different to innovation in sort of a consumer market. So I'm not necessarily interested in following the latest trend or the latest fad or whatever. Innovation, as far as I'm concerned, is making sure that we make the best use of available technology. It may not be the latest, it may not be the fastest, the most expensive, but technology which is fit for purpose for my business. And I think more importantly, it's how we use that technology rather than necessarily sort of the latest gadget we're using. So, for example, we're just rolling out time recording technology, which will allow our lawyers to record time on their mobile devices. It'll allow them to, at the end of every day, this technology will say you spent an hour working on this client. So it will allow them to actually capture time. In the past, they might have forgotten they spent some time working for a client, and this technology will remind them of that. As far as I'm concerned, that's innovation. It's not particularly sexy or whizzy or whatever, but it is technology which really supports the lawyers in what they need to do.
Do you think you should have a percentage of your budget, which you, albeit a small percentage, which you devote to new technology that may or may not work? I've heard about other IT departments that do this, and I found it quite an interesting concept. It's almost like a pyramid. So at the bottom you keep the lights on, and then at the top you have a proportion of your budget which you devote to new and exciting technology. Do you think that's appropriate within a law firm?
Well, I think that there's a degree of appropriateness around this, but I used to say that in IT, I might have one or two people in IT in the research and development function. Now I've got 3,000 users around the world. They are all involved in research and development because they're all out there looking at their app stores. They're all out there looking at technologies which they're using on their iPads, which helps them in the way in which they work. And the challenge I've got, I say, it used to be one or two people sitting in my department who were doing this work. Now I've got my 3,000 users doing that. the challenge I've got is actually capturing those good ideas, those good apps which are being used very, very well by some of the lawyers, so we can share that knowledge across the business. So no longer do I have the small R&D department, or indeed the small budget or small group of people doing this stuff. All my users are doing this stuff, so I need to be able to get that information and share it across the whole of the business.
So do you have a way of doing that? Do you encourage them to communicate with you, or how do you do that? How do you benefit from that?
We don't have a particularly sophisticated way of doing it. We don't have a very separate way of doing that. But what we are increasingly doing is trying to increase our involvement with the business, get closer to the business, a better understanding of what the lawyers are doing. So naturally, we're opening up those communication channels. So it's rather than just sort of being a one-way communication, it's a two-way communication, and because we're close to them, we will hopefully they'll share those ideas with us.
So Chris, you've worked with corporates across a lot of different sectors. How does the legal sector compare in its approach to IT? Is it behind, as some people think it is?
Well, it's interesting. When I first came into the legal space from financial services in 2002. I think my first legal appointment was. I think the legal space was very much behind, certainly financial services, which was the sector I worked in before. I think things are catching up. I think the change, my view is that the legal world is going through a structural change. And what's really prompting that? Well, we know all about the Legal Services Act, which is changing the look of the legal world. The recession has really driven this change because corporates are looking for far more from their law firms than traditionally they might have had. They're becoming far more savvy when it comes to procuring legal services. There are far more options available to them. They don't necessarily need to go to big city law firms these days to get the best legal advice. They can go elsewhere in the UK. They can go global. So things are changing significantly and very, very rapidly. And all of this is forcing law firms to become far more corporate in the way they work. And again, my particular law firm, Clyde Co, we're one of the few big firms that actually has a proper professional chief executive running the business, rather than maybe a lawyer called a chief executive or a managing partner who's a lawyer. So we're running our business very much more on corporate lines than many law firms, and I think a lot of that is driving the way in which we operate. So and driving the debate around technology and the value that technology can provide to a business. And as firms become more global, you need to have better technology to run your firm. Collaboration tools. We've got lawyers all over the world in every region, and we need to be able to communicate. So we need technology to help to drive those behaviors, drive that standardization, drive the sharing of knowledge in the business. So I think law firms were behind. Some law firms still are very behind, but I've noticed over the past few years a significant change to that. And again, if you look at the CIOs that are coming into the legal world, a lot of them are coming from outside now and bringing best practice from other sectors into the world. So things are changing.
Chris, that's fascinating. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.